Hi, this is Alex from YayFinder. Thank you for joining me today while YayFinder took over the Decatur Book Festival social media feeds. It's been so much fun. And all of these videos will hopefully, if Instagram will cooperate, be posted over at Facebook as well. So, really looking forward to this next talk. And if you aren't familiar with the YayFinder Teen Writing Challenge, teens can sign up today, starting today, and they have several weeks to sign up. Hi, Katie. And so it's teens 13 to 17 can sign up. They'll get great videos from folks like Katie talking about some different pieces of writing advice. And if the teen wins this teen writing challenge, they'll actually be able to be featured on YATL Live, which is awesome. That being said, we just think it's a great time for teens to be writing right now, to just be able to sit down, express yourself. And so it's been great to meet with all these folks today, all these amazing YA authors, and also partner with, of course, Decatur Book Festival, YATL, and Bunny from Brave and Kind Books, too. So Katie, thanks for joining.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes. So, so many questions. Well, first, let's talk. I saw, the excitement of you, unboxing your most recent book.
Yeah. Sorry, my dogs may interrupt, but I'm hoping that they'll be quiet. Sorry
That's
about that.
okay. You know what? There's been some technology. It's all sorts of things at home. No, absolutely no problem.
Okay, good. Sorry.
So let's talk about your latest book and tell us, what it's about, and also how it feels to, be able to unwrap the shipment of your own book.
So I have it right here, and I found that I was a little more emotional opening this book in particular than I was when I opened Brave Enough. I'm not sure as to why. I think it has everything to do with this cover. And seeing such a strong disabled girl on the cover was something that like resonated so much within me that it was just one of those things that I was like, I can't believe it's real. Like I never in a million years thought that this kind of book would exist, let alone that it would be something that I wrote. And so it was really emotional opening this book. Finding Balance is a story about two teenagers it's a companion novel to my first book, Brave Enough. So you meet Mari and Jace in Brave Enough, but this book actually takes place 6 months before Brave Enough takes place. So Davis is there, but he's just a side character in this one. Mari and Jace are two campers from a camp called Camp Chemo, which is a children's oncology camp that I made up in Georgia. It's based on Camp Sunshine, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've been affiliated with them for, over 30 years. I went as a camper and now I'm a counselor. But Mari and Jace meet at camp, and Jace doesn't remember having cancer. He was diagnosed when he was like a preschooler. So he doesn't really remember it, but he goes to camp anyway, and it's, it's part of his life. But he has no like real attachment to it. Mari, on the other hand, was 10 when she was diagnosed and has subsequently had to have her leg amputated. And so she lives every day with this very visible reminder of her disease. And I really wanted to tell this story. Hi, sweet bunny. I wanted to tell this story because when I was like in 7th or 8th grade, I found out that my best friend who had leukemia and was on treatment with me at the same time, that nobody at her school knew that she had leukemia. And I thought that was mind-blowing to kind of have this choice on who you tell this to. So I wanted to kind of take that story and play with it. And because I'm such a romantic at heart, I wanted to put a little romance in there as well. And so I just wanted to see what that would be like. And that's kind of the story. Mari ends up having to leave her very public high school in Atlanta and go to a private school and it's where Jace goes, and she walks in the first day, and needless to say, things that she thought were going to be super easy because she had a friend there are not. So that's kind of the story in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. And when you're writing these books, do you feel like you're writing for the person that, I mean, for the books that you wish that you had, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Every second. I said in my little teaser that I read a lot of Laura McDaniel books as a young teenager. And I loved them, and they still hold a real sweet, special space in my heart. But I was always really frustrated that somebody died. And so kind of my mantra with these books and the books that I hope to continue to write is that they will all feature a disabled person or a person with chronic illness, but nobody dies. I really want to show how we live really awesome and fulfilling lives, and that often our disability or our chronic illness, while it is always there, is kind of like our hair color. It's just part of who we are, not necessarily. And I mean, it does, like, it affects everything that I do. Like, I can't just get up and go somewhere. I have to find my crutches and then get up and go somewhere. So I feel like I can tell that kind of story while not forgetting about the person's disability or chronic illness, and making sure that it's always there, but it not being the focus of the story. I like to think that in finding balance, the focus of the story is more about these two people finding their balance together in just how you relate to these things. It's not, nobody is really sick in this book. Like, nobody is diagnosed, nobody loses a limb or anything like that. So that's, I'm absolutely writing for the books that I wanted at that age. I really wanted, and I said this when I wrote Brave Enough, I just really wanted a one-legged girl to get kissed in a book. That was like all I wanted. And so that's why I wrote it. Like, that's what I wanted, a one-legged girl to get kissed, and I wanted them to go to a cancer camp. And those were like the two things that I knew when I sat down to write Brave Enough.
And it's interesting. So all of the, or most of the author chats that I've had today have really talked about, you know, creating these spaces for teens. And I mean, I say teens, but we know everyone, you know, adults, you know, read YA as well. But let's focus on teens for now. But that, you know, it's about creating these places where people can see themselves, but then also, you know, perhaps even as tools for other people to understand what that experience is like. Have you had anyone who's come to you and said, like, wow, I had no idea this was sort of this experience for, you know, for someone who's different than me?
Yeah, I have. And it's been interesting because I've gotten some pushback. I've had some people who have read both of my books, because I have at different points conversations with people where they either don't know that, like, teens actually get cancer and that kind of thing. And they're like, well, that's not truthful. And I'm like, no, that's my lived experience. Like, I had teenagers in my high school say to me, oh, well, you don't really get cancer at this age. And I'm like, but you do, you know? And so, like, I have had people say to me that they've learned from it, but I don't ever want to be preachy about anything. I try really hard to walk that fine line. And I feel like as long as I'm authentic to the character and to their experiences, that truth will ring out. Whenever I was a young teen and reading all those Laura McDaniel books, I realized that my friends were internalizing a lot of those books and kind of waiting for me to die. And so, yeah, because that's what they saw. Like, everything on TV, everything that we read, you know, at some point I was going to relapse and die. Like, that was just the way that they kind of thought. And so I feel like if I can write these books where we don't, and where we have more typical teenage problems, then then maybe that will help show that we just are typical teenagers. Like my biggest issues in high school were not there were some cancer related things. I lost a lot of friends. So that was something that I was dealing with that maybe your average teenager wasn't. But I also was like really involved in drama club, and whether or not I got that role was often more important than anything else going on in my life. So I really want to show that side in the things that I write. I try really hard to push against the super crip phenomena, which is the idea of a disabled person being super at something, like being a Paralympian and that kind of thing. Which I know so many Paralympians, and I think it's great, but we're not all Paralympians. I am terrible at athletics. I joke that having one leg got me out of gym class, but I would not have been good at it. So I kind of just want to show more like typical stories.
Yeah.
Mostly I just want to write about kissing. Let's just
Which is
I just want to write about kissing.
Yes.
So,
would you mind reading us a passage from Finding Balance?
Sure. I'll be happy to. I am going to read from the prologue. Okay. No, I'm going to read from chapter 1. The prologue is actually, you can read part of it up on Amazon. So I'm going to read from part of chapter 1, which I think my headers are really pretty. So I'm just going to show that off for a second. And it says, it's chapter 1. A grape ended Mari Manos' student career at Southside High School. She worked her way through the hallway. As always, it was crowded. And even with teachers yelling for students to walk, please, students pushed and ran. Mari breathed deeply through her nose and fought her way to her locker. She was one of the few students allowed to carry a backpack, one of the advantages of having one leg, she guessed. She flipped her bag off of her shoulder, hanging it on a makeshift hook inside the locker before changing out her books. Her crutches were propped against the row of lockers, and she balanced without them. She should have paid more attention to what was happening around her as she went through the motions to get to her next class. She wasn't thinking at all about being in school or plans for the rest of her junior year. School was school. Not something she loved or loathed. It was just something she had to get through before she could go back to camp in the summer. Mari was zipping her backpack, hanging out on its hook, when she heard someone shout, "Fight!" But this was a common occurrence that Mari first finished putting her bag on before looking up. Her crutches were still leaning against the locker at her side. "Mari!" Leo, her older brother, yelled from farther down the hall, motioning for her. "Move!" But it was too late. Two hulking bodies barreled into her, fists and knees flying, and Mari was caught in the middle. No one connected. They mostly just bounced off of her and continued down the hall, pummeling one another. But the back of her head slammed into her now closed locker. The force of impact caused Mari to see stars and sink down into the hallway's gross carpet. "Well, shit," she said, stars swimming in her vision. "You okay?" Ellie, her best school friend, ran to Mari from her locker down the hall. A teacher, Mari thought it was the Spanish teacher, and Leo were at her side. Other teachers were breaking up the fight, with a large section of the student body continued on with their lives, ignoring the hallway drama. Yep, Mari blinked hard and the stars moved out of her field of vision. No big deal. She let Leo help her up, and he handed her her pink forearm clip crutches. "You sure?" Ellie asked, taking her bag for her. "They slammed right into you." "Never better," she lied. "We gotta go. Delafonte will not give me a break for being tardy." "I'll write you a pass." The Spanish teacher shook her head, smiling. Mari was sure the teacher was thinking about how precocious and inspirational she was. Teachers did that. This one in particular had stopped Mari more than a few times last year to tell her how brave she was and how much harder things must be for Mari. That had to be what caused the nausea now, not a possible head injury.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was that your experience too? I mean, not specifically that experience of getting pushed, by lockers, but that where there were teachers who you felt like were always sort of like, thinking, "Oh, well, you're already doing so much," sort of treating you differently than other kids.
Yeah, and I was so my senior year, they busted out the law that we couldn't bring backpacks. And so I was the only student with a backpack in our high school. And teachers did definitely, especially ones who didn't know me, like teachers who I wasn't in their class, treated me differently. The ones who I was in their class or maybe had multiple classes with, like my drama teacher and my French teacher and a couple of others that I was just in their classes for multiple years, knew better and knew that I would sometimes push the edge of my rules. But teachers who didn't know me were often, and I got stopped frequently being told I was inspirational, especially if I did anything on stage. You know, you were just so good when you were on stage. And I'm like, well, thanks. Me and everybody else that was in that musical was pretty good too. So it was a lot of that kind of thing. I definitely, so I did not have, there's a document called a 504, which anybody who has a disability, it's your accommodations. I went through my entire school career without one. So I had to do all of that advocating for myself. And at it's talked about in the book. And so like I would have to go in and talk to my teachers before I was in class with them and tell them, okay, so I might be a few minutes late to your class because I'm coming from the trailers, or, you know, I might have to leave your class early because I have to get to chemistry and he is for real and I cannot be late to that class, and that kind of thing. And teachers were usually great about it. And because we actually carried textbooks back then, I would keep a set of textbooks at home. So I would have to ask for 2 sets of books. Oh. So I had a set of textbooks at home, and then I had one that I carried, either kept in the teacher's classroom, or that I, if it was a class that I was notorious for not doing my homework in, I would carry it around and keep it in my locker so I could do the homework during lunch or whenever I should have done it earlier. And so like those were things that set me apart, and that teachers would either lean into a good deal or they would try to go the other way and be like, I'm not going to treat you any differently than any other student. I am different. Like it was harder for me to get around my high school. I had an elevator key, but because of my own stubbornness, 85% of the time I didn't use the elevator. It also smelled really funny. But my freshman year, right after I had gotten it, I got called up to the attendance office and they asked for my key back. And I was kind of like, did I do something wrong? Why are you asking me for this key back? And the attendance lady goes, well, aren't you done with it? You've had it 6 weeks. And I was like, well, my leg is not going to grow back. And she looked up and she realized who it was. And she went, yeah, you're right. Sorry. And like, they never asked me again, but it was just one of those moments where like, they kind of, you know, it just all kind of flipped out. I still have my elevator key, in fact, from my high school. I found it the other day and it kind of made me absurdly happy.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much. So one other just quick thing. What would you sort of say to teens during this time who, you know, might just feel like they don't have the confidence to sort of get started with writing? I mean, what would you say to, you know, encourage?
I would say go for it. Like there is no worst case scenario in this situation. There is, you know, I coveted my writing whenever I was a teenager. I started writing at about 14 is whenever I started like writing my own kind of fiction. And I wouldn't let anybody else read it. I was just almost embarrassed by it, embarrassed that I had these stories running through my head. And so my advice would be is don't be embarrassed of it. Be proud of your work. Like it's just like if you were, you know, a prima ballerina like Kaysen and Brave Enough, like own that. Like that's something to be really proud of. And so there's no worst case scenario right now. The writing that you get to do right now is the easiest, and maybe not easiest isn't maybe the right word. It's liberating, and it's the most fun that you get to you can have right now with writing. And I say explore all of the genres. Like if you read widely, you know, write widely. And And don't be afraid to lean into those impulses. And if you write fan fiction, write fan fiction. I wrote so much bad General Hospital fan fiction as an older teenager, and it was still some of the most fun that I had in writing at that time. And you got instant gratification, like when you posted it and things like that. So I loved that coming from the theater. That was really nice for me. But lean into your writing as much as you can. But if you can't, if you find that right now your brain space is just not letting you write because of all the other things, it's okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something else that I wish I had heard. I had lots of stuff going on in my brain at lots of different times as a teenager. And I would think, oh, I'm going to write it all out. And then I'd get there and I would stare at my document and nothing came and nothing happened. And it would make me feel bad, like I wasn't being productive enough, or that I wasn't able to like use this as some sort of catharsis. And I just realized I don't work that way, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. I don't have to work like every other writer seems to work. It's not an all or nothing. Some days you may be able to write 10,000 words or something absurd like that, and it's amazing, and lean into those days. But if you can't, it's also okay. So I think, I don't know if that's good advice or not. But
I think that's great. I think that's great advice, because go for it. But you know what? If it's not coming to you, don't put it on yourself. Don't. Yeah. Why would be better? I should be doing these different things. I think that's great advice.
And I find that sometimes, like, I'm always thinking about my writing. Like, even if I'm not physically sitting at the keyboard, I am a big crafter, so I crochet and I do needlework and things like that. And I find that often I'll be doing those things, and that's when the plot problem will solve itself. And I won't even necessarily be thinking about it. It'll just come to me, and I'll be like, oh, there it is. And it's like my brain has been working on it the entire time. And there it is. I had been struggling with the plot for Finding Balance for a good 6 months, and I couldn't figure it out, and I couldn't figure it out, and I couldn't figure it out. And I literally woke up one morning, and the whole plot laid itself out for me. And I went, incredible. Well, there it is. And it was, I do truly believe it was because my brain was always thinking about it. And I didn't push myself. And I remember thinking, well, maybe Brave Enough is my only book, and that's okay. And then Finding Balance happened. So I think that that's probably my biggest piece of advice, is that if it's not working for you one day, don't stress out about it. It will work for you later. Don't give up on your writing ever. Don't let your 8th grade English language arts teacher tell you something really nasty about your writing and you decide never to write again, because someday you can ticker your book and say, here, look what I did.
Yes.
So that's my other piece of advice, is don't give up on your writing.
That is also excellent advice. Well, thank you so much, Katie. Really appreciate it. And I'm just going to give one more shout out to the Teen Writing Challenge we have on YayFinder.com. You can sign up completely free. And it's you'll get all these great videos from YA authors on just, their really quick writing tips. And then at the end, if you win the writing challenge, you'll be featured on YATL Live, which is awesome. And just again, since you're my last social media interview, Decatur Book Festival takeover of the day, just want to also again thank Decatur Book Festival for letting me set up all these sessions and just take over their social media for today.
It was so fun. Thank you so much. And I loved watching the videos today. So.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And stay safe. These are interesting times.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.